So make sure you can uh, do this dot products and cross products, and make sure you practice this using your three-dimensional axis to produce these correctly. All right, now let's take a look at how we can use this mathematically. Because sometimes, just doing straight out math actually helps out to visualize more than just doing visually first without the math. So let's say we have more general vectors. So this can be form of a vector in three dimensions of axx hat plus ayy hat plus azz hat. And my b vector has bxx hat plus byy hat plus bzz hat. All right. So just to give you a little example of, let's say, a vector can be as 3x hat minus 2y hat plus 1z hat. These are some numbers that I just made up, all right? And my b vector, let's say, has negative 1x hat plus 4y hat plus 3z hat. Again, arbitrary vector. It's kind of hard to visualize where they're going to be, right? Unless you could visualize in three-dimensional space, right? This one looks like it is in fourth quadrant above the xy plane, right? So imagine the fourth quadrant, and it's going to be above the xy plane. So my a vector is going to be somewhere here like this, right? And it's going to be positive 3, negative 2, and then it's going to be up like this. So it's going to be up like this, or the shadow is going to be xy plane. And my b vector is going to be negative x, right? Positive 4, so it's going to be in second quadrant above the xy plane. So here, and like that. So purple vectors like this with the shadow vectors. So we have like two vectors like that out in XYZ space, right? So you can cross these two, and then you're going to have one that's going through the page the other way as your cross product, right? Finding the angles will be a disaster unless you use the dot product. So here, to find just the cross product itself, when I cross A cross B, right, you have to triple FOIL this, just like what we did for dot product. However, when I cross AX, right, cross BX, this is what I get. AX x hat cross BX x hat. We know x hat cross x hat will produce what? Good, like you said, nothing, 0. Right. You guys are, yeah, right? So even though, right? All right, well, continue on. AX x hat cross BYY hat will produce AX x hat cross BYY hat. Well, the angle is 90 degrees. A sine of 90 is going to be 1. So we have AX BY. What's X hat cross Y hat? Correct. Positive Z hat. Right? Now, that's what we have. AX BY Z hat. What about AX X hat cross BZZ hat? So AX X hat cross BZZ hat, I have AX BZ times X hat cross Z hat. What would that be? Negative Y hat. Outstanding. Good. So we know that. So we have 0, and then we have plus AX BYZ hat minus AX BZ Y hat. Now let's do AY hat cross BX X hat. AY hat cross BX X hat will produce AYBX times sine of 90, which is 1, and Y hat cross X hat will give us negative Z hat. Very good. Negative Z hat. What about Y hat cross Y hat? What would that be? 0. Now, Y hat cross BZ hat. We're going to get AYBZ, Y cross Z. Excellent. Positive X hat. Right? So when we do these, that's what we get. Now we'll do AZ Z hat cross BX X hat will give me AZZ hat cross BX X hat will give me AZ BX. Z hat cross X hat will give me positive Y hat. Very good. Positive Y hat. Right? AZ Z hat cross BY Y hat will give me AZ BY. Z cross Y will give me negative X. Excellent. And then, of course, Z hat cross Z hat will give me 0. Very good. So now let's consolidate. Well, zeros go away, so it doesn't matter. But let's put all the x's together. Like, for example, let's put all the x's together. So AYBZ minus AZBY, and I factor out the x hat. So this is that. Then, if I look at the y hats, I have AZBX y hat minus AXBZ y hat. I could factor out the y hat, and I get this. Then, if I look at the z's, right, I get AX BY Z hat minus AY BX Z hat, and I factor out the Z hat, and I get that. So you can memorize this, or you could just say, you know what, I know that this rule exists, and I have now the second definition of my cross product. First definition was, AB sine theta n hat. I know this. Now I know this is a second definition. All right. So you can use this actually to do in matrices. If you know how to do matrices, you don't have to memorize this. So you could just work it straight out using matrices. And to do the matrices, right, you can say, oh, I remember this from my 5th grade when we were doing matrices in my gifted program, right? Wow, this is kind of still good, right? You guys do matrices at 5th grade gifted program. All right, and then I just extend x and y further out, right? I know it's been so long ago you did this, but then I write down the ax and ay here, and then the bx and by here, right? So when you do matrices, you do this minus that, right? So it's this minus that. Then for the y's, you do this minus that. Right? And then you do this minus that. You could actually extend the z out one more if you want to, and then you go to this minus this. Same thing, right? Voila. Okay. So if you were to use the matrices, right, it's so much easier to do it that way. Okay. Or if you just memorize this, okay, you can actually use. So how do we use this? So now that see this, let's see if we can use these vectors here and use matrices to figure out and then the b vector is so when I do a cross b, right, I can use matrices. So I use x hat, y hat, z hat, and then I use 3, -2, 1, and then I use -1, 4, 3, and then I will extend this, right? I mean, if you want to go up to z, that's fine. I don't mind that, right? If you feel more comfortable doing it that way, that's perfectly okay. Then I will use this, okay? So it'd be -2 times 3 minus, right, minus 1 times 4, right? That would be the x hat. Plus, now you do this, oops, that will be 1 times -1 minus this, that will be 3 times 3, okay, y hat, and then plus, you'll do this, which is 3 times 4 minus, and then you'll do this, right, which is -2 times -1. And that would be the z hat. So that would be -6 minus 4, right? So what is that? That looks like -10 x hat. And then you got -1 minus 9, you get negative 10 y hat. Then 12 minus 2. Really? Are they all negatives? Right? So positive 10 z hat. All 10s? Check my math. Is that correct? I guess, right? I mean, I'm going to have to trust my math. So my A cross B is equal to that. All right. So that would be an example of what we did. All right. So this is your homework. This is your homework. Pages 27, 28, and 29. And you should have completed the other multiple choice questions in the back. We'll go over that on Thursday. And Thursday, I will go over all the homework problems. And then we will have a quiz on dot products and cross products. And then we'll start chapter 4. All right. Any questions? Sorry I took a little longer than a minute or two. So have a